Hey there. Dear friends, it's Eva, your old pal from Eufaula, Alabama, sitting on my front porch with a glass of sweet tea, watching the sun dip low over Lake Eufaula. At 65, I've learned life's like a pecan pie sweet, but it takes work to get it just right. You'll ever feel your heart break? Thinking about family that's drifted away. That's the story I'm sharing today. About Evie Carter, Evie, to us locals a mama who gave her all, only to hear her daughter-in-law say, "You don't fit in our Christmas." Those words cut deep. But Evie, she found her strength, like a camellia blooming after a storm. Let's step into her world, right into the moment she stood tall, fighting for her home and her heart. Come along, sisters, and let's see how she did it. The Barber County Courthouse stood like a sentinel in downtown Eufaula, its red brick walls weathered by a century of Alabama summers. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper, sunlight slanting through tall windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. Evie Carter, 74, stood before Judge Howard, her hands clutching a hand-embroidered handkerchief, a keepsake from her mama. Her navy dress, simple but dignified, hung loose on her frame, and the pearl necklace borrowed from her friend, Louise Lou Mitchell, glinted softly. Across the room, her son Matt Carter, 38, sat beside his wife, Caroline Carrie Reynolds, their faces tight with a mix of defiance and unease. The air was thick, heavy with the weight of a family torn apart. Evie's voice, steady despite the tremble in her chest, filled the room. "Judge Howard, this house by Lake Eufaula ain't just brick and mortar. It's the dream me and my Henry poured our lives into every paycheck from the textile mill. Every night we sat on the porch, planning our future. I raised Matt there, loved him with all I had, but I won't let him take it from me. Not after what he's done." Matt shifted, his eyes fixed on the floor, his button-down shirt rumpled like he'd slept in it. Carrie, in a tailored blazer, crossed her arms, her lips a thin line. Evie's words hung like a hymn in the quiet, and for a moment, she saw the boy Matt used to be running through her garden, sketching the lake with crayons. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd let his wife's cold words, "You're too simple," Mrs. Carter, cut deeper than any knife. "Mrs. Carter," Judge Howard said, his voice gravelly, "you claim your son and his wife tried to alter your will without consent. That's a serious accusation. What evidence do you have?" Evie's lawyer, James Jim Bennett, a young man with kind eyes and a Dothan drawl, stood. "Your Honor, we have a recording," he said, holding up a phone. "Mrs. Reynolds, speaking at the Eufaula Pilgrimage Festival, bragging about manipulating Mr. Carter to secure the house." The courtroom stirred, whispers rippling like waves on the lake. Evie's heart pounded as Jim played the recording. Carrie's voice, sharp and smug, echoed Matt's easy to handle. "I told him his mama's house is worth a fortune. We'll sell it, get her into a nursing home, and live like we deserve." Gasps rose from the gallery locals in crimson-tied caps, church ladies from First Baptist. All knowing Evie's heart, Matt's face paled, his hands clenching the table. "Mama." "I didn't," he started, but Evie cut him off, her voice rising like a summer storm. "You didn't what?" "Matt," she said, tears brimming but held back. "Didn't mean to let Carrie call me a burden. Didn't mean to sneak behind my back. Trying to change my will. I gave you everything, school, love, this home, and you stood there, silent. When she said, 'I didn't fit in your Christmas,' you broke my heart, son, but I'm breaking the cycle. This house is mine, and so is my dignity." Carrie scoffed, muttering, "Bless her heart, she's making a scene." But her bravado faltered under Evie's gaze, fierce as the sun on an August noon. The judge raised a hand, silence in the room. "I'll review the evidence," he said. "We'll reconvene for a ruling. Until then, No actions regarding the estate. Evie exhaled, her knees weak, but she stood tall, like the camellias in her garden after rain. She glanced at Matt, hoping for a flicker of the boy she'd raised, but his eyes stayed down, locked on his hands. Carrie grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Evie turned to Jim, who gave her a nod. "You did good." "Mrs. Carter," he whispered, "we've got him." As she stepped outside, the Alabama air hit her, warm and heavy, the lake glistening in the distance. Lou waited by the courthouse steps, her braid swinging, a thermos of sweet tea in hand. "You showed him, Evie," she said, hugging her tight. Henry'd be proud. Evie managed a small smile, but her heart ached. She'd fought for her home. But at what cost? She clutched the handkerchief, thinking of the moment that brought her here a Christmas invitation, her name scratched out in black ink, and Carrie's cold words. She'd stood in her kitchen then, staring at the lake, feeling like the world had forgotten her. But Lou's voice on the phone, urging her to fight, and Henry's journal, found in the cedar chest, had lit a spark. "Stand up, Evie," Henry had written in 1980. "You're stronger than you know." 3 months earlier, Evie had sat on her porch, the invitation crumpling in her hands. The lake was still that night, its surface like glass, reflecting a moon as lonely as she felt. She'd baked pecan pie, hoping Matt might visit. But the pie sat untouched, the kitchen quiet save for Biscuit's soft snores. Carrie's words, "You're too simple," had stung, but Matt's silence hurt worse. He'd stood there, in their fancy Montgomery house, letting his wife dismiss her like she was nothing. Lou had called that night, her voice crackling with fury. "Evie Carter, you're not sitting alone this Christmas. I'm coming over and we're having whole cornbread and hymns." She'd shown up with a casserole, dragging Helen from next door, and they'd sat around Evie's table, laughing and crying. It was Lou who'd said, "That house is yours. Evie, don't let him take it." And when Evie found Henry's journal, its pages yellowed. She'd read his words, "You're the heart of this family. Don't let anyone dim your light." The next day, Evie had called Jim Bennett, a lawyer recommended by the church ladies. She'd driven to his office, the radio playing Patsy Cline's Crazy, her hands gripping the wheel of her old Buick. Jim had listened, his eyes kind, and promised to fight. "They won't get your house, Mrs. Carter," he'd said, "not if I can help it." Now, standing outside the courthouse, Evie felt that promise holding her up. She'd faced Matt, faced Carrie, and spoken her truth. The lake shimmered, whispering peace, and she knew, whatever the judge decided, she'd reclaimed something more than a house, her voice, her heart, her place in the world. Oh, sisters, Evie's stand in that courthouse was like a hymn rising from the choir at First Baptist Raw. True and full of heart. You all ever had to fight for your place, to remind the world you're still here. I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. If Evie's courage touched you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we've got more to this tale: tears, triumphs, and maybe a slice of pecan pie. Stay with me, and let's see where Evie's journey takes us next. Hey there, sisters, it's Eva again, sitting on my porch in Eufaula, Alabama, with a glass of sweet tea and the soft hum of crickets rising from Lake Eufaula. At 65, I've learned that life's sweetest moments, like a warm pecan pie fresh from the oven, often come with a side of heartache. Y'all ever look back and wonder how a family that once laughed together drifted so far apart? That's where we're heading today. Back to the quiet days before Evie Carter's world turned upside down, when her little cottage by the lake was her sanctuary, and her son Matt was still her light. Let's walk through her garden, feel the weight of her love, and see how a mother's heart can break, soft and slow, like a camellia dropping its petals after a storm. Evie Carter's cottage on the shores of Lake Eufaula was a humble slice of heaven. its white clapboard walls weathered by Alabama summers, its wide porch cradling a pair of rocking chairs that creaked with every breeze. At 74, Evie moved through her days with the grace of a woman who'd known hard work and harder losses. The kitchen, heart of the home, smelled of coffee brewed in an old percolator and the faint sweetness of clematis vines climbing the trellis outside. Mornings found her in the garden, tending to her camellias, their pink blooms a quiet defiance against time. Her hound dog, Biscuit, lazed at her feet, his soft snores blending with the lake's gentle lapping. This was Evie's world, built with her late husband, Henry, from dreams and sweat. They'd bought the land in 75, back when Eufaula was just a sleepy town of fishing boats and church suppers. Henry, a mechanic with hands rough as oak bark, had laid every plank of that porch, while Evie, working long shifts at the textile mill in Montgomery, saved every dime to make it theirs. They'd raised their only child, Matthew Matt here, watching him grow from a boy sketching the lake with crayons to a man chasing bigger dreams. Now, with Henry gone 15 years, taken by a heart that gave out too soon, Evie held on to the cottage like a lifeline, its every creak a whisper of the life they'd shared. This morning, Evie stood at her kitchen counter, mixing dough for pecan pie, Matt's favorite since he was knee-high. The radio played Hank Williams' "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry," its mournful twang echoing her mood. She'd always baked for Matt's visits, hoping the scent of brown sugar and butter might coax him back from Montgomery, where he lived with his wife, Caroline Carrie Reynolds. But those visits had dwindled, replaced by quick calls or texts that felt like afterthoughts. Evie glanced at the fridge, where a photo from Matt's high school graduation hung, held by a magnet shaped like an Alabama Crimson Tide football. He'd been all grins then, arm around her, the lake sparkling behind them. Now, at 38, he was a stranger, his world of fancy dinners and real estate deals a far cry from her quiet porch. She slid the pie into the oven, wiping her hands on her apron, and stepped onto the porch. Biscuit trailed her, settling at her feet as she sank into Henry's rocking chair. The lake stretched out, its surface catching the October light like a mirror. Evie's fingers traced the armrest, worn smooth by years of Henry's touch. "What's happened to us?" "Henry," she whispered, her voice lost in the breeze. She thought of the summers when Matt would run barefoot through the garden, his laughter mixing with the buzz of cicadas, or the evenings they'd eat fried catfish on this porch. Henry telling stories about his army days. Those memories were her anchor, but they couldn't fill the emptiness left by Matt's absence. The rift had started slow, like a crack in a window pane. After Henry's death, Matt had thrown himself into work, moving to Montgomery for college, then building a career in real estate. Evie had cheered him on, working extra shifts to cover his tuition, even when her back ached and her hands trembled from the mill's machines. She'd been proud when he landed a job at a big firm, prouder still when he married Carrie, a polished woman from an Atlanta family with money to burn. But pride turned to unease as Matt's visits grew rare, his calls shorter, his eyes avoiding hers when they did meet. Carrie's influence was clear in her fancy clothes, her talk of country clubs, her way of making Evie feel small, like her pecan pie and lakefront cottage were relics of a lesser world. Evie's thoughts were interrupted by the crunch of gravel. Louise Lou Mitchell's pickup rolled up, its fender sporting a faded Roll Tide sticker. Lou, 70, with a braid as grey as Spanish moss, hopped out, carrying a basket of collard greens from her garden. "Morning, Evie," she called, her voice warm as a church hymn. "Brought you some greens for supper. You catch the Crimson Tide game last night, Lord." What a heartstopper, Evie smiled, rising to hug her. Missed it. "Lou, but I heard we squeaked by." "Come in. Pie's in the oven." They settled at the kitchen table, the pie's aroma filling the air, Biscuit snoring by the door. Lou sipped coffee from a chipped mug, her eyes sharp. You look like you're carrying the world. Hun, what's eating you? Evie stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking soft. It's Matt, she said, her voice low. He ain't been by in months. Keeps talking about selling this place, moving me to some retirement home in Montgomery. Says it's too much for me, living alone. Lou's brow furrowed. That boy's got no right telling you what to do with your home. This is where you and Henry built your life. What's he thinking? It's not just him, Evie said, her fingers tightening on the mug. It's Carrie. She's got him wrapped around her finger, talking about how this house ain't worth keeping. How I'd be better off somewhere easier. I reckon she sees dollar signs, not memories. Lou snorted, setting her mug down. Carrie Reynolds wouldn't know a home from a hotel. She's all Atlanta flash. No Eufaula heart. You gonna let her push you out? Evie shook her head, but doubt gnawed at her. I don't want to fight Matt, Lou. He's my boy. But this house, it's all I got left of Henry. Of us. Selling it feels like selling my soul. Lou reached across, her hand warm on Evie's. You're stronger than you know. Evie Carter. Henry always said you had a fire in you. Don't let it go out. After Lou left, Evie wandered to the living room, where a cedar chair sat by the window, its lid carved with a lake scene Henry had made. She lifted it, the hinges creaking, and pulled out his journal, its leather cover soft as a prayer. She settled into Henry's chair, the fabric still holding his scent motor oil and pine, and opened to a page from 1982 when Matt was 5. June 12. Took Matt fishing on the lake today. He drew a picture of the cottage, all crooked lines and big smiles. Evie hung it on the wall. Proud as punch. I want him to know this place is his roots, no matter where he goes. Evie's eyes stung. Picturing Matt's small hands clutching a crayon, his laughter filling the porch. That picture still hung in the hall, faded but precious. She turned another page, dated 1998 when Matt was a teenager. Matt's got big dreams, talking about college, making a name. Evie worries he'll forget us, but I know her love will keep him grounded. She's his compass, always will be. She closed the journal, pressing it to her chest. Henry had seen Matt's heart, his spark, even when he chased dreams beyond Eufaula. But he'd also seen Evie's strength, the way she held their family together. Losing Henry had shattered something in Matt, pushing him to prove himself in a world Evie didn't understand. She'd tried to bridge the gap, baking his favorite pie, calling to check in, but each silence widened the crack between them. The phone rang, pulling her back. She hoped it was Matt, but it was Helen Peterson, her neighbor, asking if she'd bring collard greens to the First Baptist potluck. Be there. Helen, Evie said, forcing a smile. She hung up, her gaze falling on the fridge photo. Where'd you go, Matt? She whispered, her voice breaking. That afternoon, Evie drove her Buick to the Eufaula farmers market, its stalls lining the lakefront, bursting with okra, peaches, and jars of honey. She traded camellia cuttings with a vendor, chatting about the upcoming pilgrimage festival, where folks toured the town's historic homes. Her cottage wasn't on the tour, but she took pride in its simple beauty, its porch a testament to Henry's hands. At a stall selling cornbread, she overheard 2 women whispering about Matt's firm in Montgomery, how he was moving up with Carrie's family. Evie's heart sank, the words stirring a familiar ache. Back home, she baked another pie, the kitchen warm with its scent. She wrapped it in foil, scribbling for Matt on a note, and set it on the counter, a quiet prayer. The radio switched to Patsy Cline's Walking After Midnight, and Evie hummed along, Henry's voice echoing in her memory. She thought of their last Christmas together, 2009, when Matt had come home, his laughter filling the house as they ate pie by the fire. Now, with Christmas near, she wondered if he'd come at all. The phone buzzed. A text from Matt, busy week. Mama, might not make it down soon. Talk later. Evie stared at it, her thumb hovering over the screen. She typed pie's weight in when you're ready. Love you. Then hit send. Knowing no reply would come, she sank into Henry's chair, the journal in her lap, and read another line. Evie's love is fierce, but she's got to stand up for herself, too. Matt needs to see her heart, not just her hands. The word stirred something in her, a flicker of resolve. She'd spent years giving, sacrificing, hoping Matt would see her. But maybe it was time to show him not just her love, but her strength. She looked out at the lake, its waves catching the last light, and felt Henry's presence, urging her on. Whatever came next, she'd face it, not just for Matt, but for the woman she was. The one Henry had loved, the one who'd built this home with camellias and dreams. Hey there, dear sisters, it's Eva, back on my porch in Eufaula, Alabama, with a glass of sweet tea and the lake shining under a cotton candy sky. At 65, I've learnt that sometimes the folks we love most can hurt us deepest, like a thorn hiding in a camellia bloom. You'll ever hold on to hope for a family gathering, only to have it slip through your fingers. That's where we find Evie Carter today, standing in her kitchen, her heart heavy as a Sunday hymn, facing a wound that cuts deeper than she ever imagined. Let's step into her world, feel the sting of betrayal, and see how a mother's love wrestles with a pride that's been trampled. Come along, and let's walk this lonesome road with her. Evie Carter stood at her mailbox on Lakeview Lane, the October breeze carrying the scent of damp earth and clematis from her garden. The Eufaula sky was a quilt of clouds, hinting at rain, and Evie's hands, rough from years at the textile mill, trembled as she sorted the mail, a seed catalogue, a church newsletter, and a thick ivory envelope with gold script. Her breath caught. It was the Christmas invitation from her son, Matthew Matt Carter, and his wife, Caroline Carrie Reynolds. For weeks, she'd clung to the hope that Matt would invite her to their Montgomery home for the holidays, a chance to mend the distance growing between them. Maybe, she thought, this was his way of reaching out. Back in her cottage, the kitchen glowed under the soft light of a single bulb, the air warm with the scent of coffee brewing in her old percolator. Evie set the envelope on the table, beside a cooling pecan pie she'd baked for the First Baptist potluck. Her hound dog, Biscuit, snuffled at her feet, his tail thumping soft against the linoleum. She wiped her hands on her apron, heart fluttering like a moth, and slit the envelope with a butter knife. The invitation was elegant, announcing a Christmas celebration at Matt and Carrie's Montgomery estate, with promises of carols, fine wine, and festive cheer. But as Evie unfolded it, her world tilted. Her name, Evelyn Carter, was scrawled at the top, crossed out with a jagged black marker. Tucked inside was a note in Matt's hurried hand. Mama, I'm sorry, but Carrie thinks it's best you don't come. It'd be too much. Matt. Evie sank into a chair, the invitation crumpling in her fist. The black marker was a blade, slicing through years of love, leaving her raw. She stared at it, the gold script mocking her, and felt a sob rise, sharp and unbidden. How had it come to this, her Matt, the boy who'd clung to her at Henry's funeral, who'd sketched their lake cottage with a child's pride, now saw her as, what an outsider, a burden to be scratched out like a mistake. The radio, playing low, switched to Patsy Cline's Crazy, its mournful notes weaving through the quiet. Evie's gaze drifted to the fridge, where a photo of her and Matt at his high school graduation hung. faded under an Alabama crimson tide magnet. He'd been all smiles then, arm around her, the lake sparkling behind them. Now, that boy was gone, replaced by a man who let his wife's cold words, "You're too simple," Mrs. Carter, define their family. Evie's throat tightened, and she pressed the handkerchief to her eyes, willing the tears to stay put. She wouldn't cry, not yet. But inside, something broke, like a camellia petal falling her silent to the ground. She rose, unsteady, and stepped onto the porch, Biscuit trailing her. The lake stretched out, its surface rippling under the grey sky, whispering secrets only she and Henry had known. She sank into Henry's rocking chair, its creak a familiar comfort, and clutched the invitation, its edges bite in her palm. "Oh, Henry," she whispered. "What do I do? Our boy's slipping away, and I don't know how to hold on." The lake offered no answers, its waves a steady rhythm, like the hymns they'd sung at First Baptist, back when faith felt simple. The rift with Matt had been growing for years, slow as moss on a live oak. It started after Henry's death, when Matt, just 23, threw himself into college, then a real estate career in Montgomery. Evie had cheered him on, working double shifts at the mill to pay his tuition, her hands aching from the looms. She'd been proud when he married Carrie, a woman from Atlanta money, thinking she'd bring him joy. But Carrie's world country clubs, designer dresses, charity galas was a far cry from Eufaula's lakefront suppers. Evie felt it first at their wedding, when Carrie's mama had glanced at her cotton dress and said, "Bless your heart, you're so quaint." Matt had laughed it off, but his eyes didn't meet hers. Over time, Carrie's influence tightened. Matt's visits to Eufaula dwindled, his calls growing short, his talk filled with Carrie's plans, new cars, bigger houses, a life Evie couldn't touch. The house by the lake, once Matt's pride, became a sore spot. "Mama, it's too much for you," he'd say, his voice edged with impatience. "You should sell it, move to Montgomery, maybe a retirement place." Evie'd bristle, her voice firm. "This is my home, Matt. Your daddy built it. You used to love it." But Matt's replies grew colder, echoing Carrie's disdain. "Times change. Mama, you can't live in the past." Evie's thoughts were cut by the phone's ring, sharp in the quiet. She hoped it was Matt, calling to explain, to take back the note. But it was Louise Lou Mitchell, her voice crackling through the line. "Evie, you at home? I'm coming over. Got a feeling you need company." "Lou, I'm fine." Evie lied, her voice thin. "Don't you fib to me." "Evelyn Carter," Lou said, her tone half scold, half love. "I'm bringing cornbread. Be there in 10. Evie hung up, a faint smile tugging her lips. Lou, 70, with a braid grey as a winter sky, had been her rock since Henry's passing. They'd met at First Baptist, bonding over potlucks and hymns, sharing the ache of children who'd moved away. Lou's son lived in California, sending postcards but rarely calling, and she'd turned that pain into a fierce loyalty to her friends. True to her word, Lou's pickup rumbled up, its Roll Tide sticker gleaming. She strode in, basket in hand, her plaid shirt smelling of earth and collards. "All right, hun," she said, setting the cornbread on the counter. "What's got you looking like you lost your last friend?" Evie slid the invitation across the table, the black marker stark against the ivory. Lou's eyes narrowed, her hand pausing mid-sip. "Lord have mercy," she muttered. "Matt did this, and Carrie's behind it. I reckon." Evie nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Carrie called yesterday, said I'm too simple for their Christmas. Matt just let her, didn't say a word." Lou slammed her mug down, coffee sloshing. "That girl's got no more heart than a snake. And Matt, letting her talk like that, Evie. You raised him better." "I thought I did," Evie said, her eyes on the lake, its waves churning like her thoughts. But he's different now. Lou. Carrie's got him thinking this house, this life, ain't worth keeping. I'm losing him. Lou leaned forward, her voice fierce. You ain't losing nothing. You're Evie Carter, strongest woman I know. This house is your heart, yours and Henry's. Don't let him take it, or you. Evie's throat tightened. Lou's words stirring a spark. She rose, walking to the cedar chest in the living room, its carved lake scene glinting in the light. She lifted the lid, pulling out Henry's journal, its pages yellowed like old lace, settling into his chair. She opened to a page from 1990 when Matt was 12. October 3rd. Matt drew the lake again. Better this time. Evie hung it in the hall, proud as a peacock. I told him this place is his legacy, but he's got to earn it with love. Not just take it. She traced Henry's script, remembering Matt's small hands, his sketches pinned to every wall. That picture still hung in the hall, a child's vision of their home, now faded but precious. Another page. From 2008, Henry's last year. Evie's love for Matt is fierce, but she's got to stand up for herself. He's chasing dreams, but he needs to see her heart, not just her hands. Evie closed the journal. Tears spilling silent. Henry had seen Matt's drift, his hunger for a world beyond Eufaula, and he'd known Evie's strength. Even when she doubted it, she'd given Matt everything: school, love, this house, but his silence, his choice to let Carrie erase her, was a betrayal she couldn't unfeel. She looked at the invitation, its black marker scar, and felt her resolve harden like the lake freezing in a rare winter chill. The doorbell chimed, startling her. Helen Peterson, her neighbor, stood there, holding a jar of honey from the farmer's market. Evie, you coming to the potluck tomorrow? She asked, her corgi yipping at her heels. Need your pecan pie to steal the show. Evie forced a smile. Taking the jar. I'll be there. Helen, save me a seat. Helen's eyes softened. You all right? Hon, look like you've been wrestling ghosts. Just memories, Evie said, her voice tight. I'll be fine. After Helen left, Evie wandered to the hall, staring at Matt's sketch. You used to love this place, she whispered, her finger tracing the crooked lines. She thought of Christmas, just weeks away, and the empty chair at her table. Would Matt call, explain, invite her after all? Or was this note the end, a door closing on their bond? She returned to the kitchen, the pie cooling on the counter, its note, for Matt, curling at the edges. The radio played Hank Williams' Your Cheatin' Heart, its twang a mirror to her pain. She dialed Matt's number, heart pounding, but it went to voicemail. His voice crisp. This is Matt Carter. Leave a message. She hung up, unable to speak, and sank into a chair, the invitation beside her. A knock at the door broke the silence. Lou was back, her face set. Evie, I've been thinking, she said, stepping inside. You can't let this slide. Carrie's poison, and Matt's drinking it. You gotta fight for this house, for you. Evie looked at the lake, its waves glinting in the dusk. I don't want to lose him, Lou. But this, she held up the invitation. Voice breaking, this ain't my Matt. I don't know who he is anymore. Lou sat beside her, her hand warm. He's still in there, hun. But you can't wait for him to see you. You gotta show him who you are. Evie Carter, who built this home with Henry, who don't bow to nobody. Evie's eyes fell on the journal, Henry's words echoing, stand up, Evie. She nodded, slow, a fire kindling in her chest. Maybe you're right, she said, her voice steadying. Maybe it's time I reminded him. The lake shimmered, a promise of peace, and Evie felt Henry's strength, urging her on. She didn't know what lay ahead, a fight, a loss, or a chance to heal, but she'd face it, not just for Matt, but for the woman she'd always been, the one who'd planted camellias and dreamed by the water. Hey there, sweet sisters. It's Eva, nestled on my porch in Eufaula, Alabama, with a glass of sweet tea and the lake humming soft under a crescent moon. At 65, I've learned that sometimes a woman's heart has to break before it can blaze, like a camellia holding fast through a winter storm. You'll ever feel that moment when you know you gotta stand up, not just for love, but for your own worth. That's where we find Evie Carter now. Her kitchen lit by a single lamp, her hands shaking but sure, ready to fight for the home she built with Henry. Let's walk with her, feel the fire kindling in her soul, and see how a mother's love turns to steel. Come along, and let's watch Evie take back what's hers. Evie Carter stood in her kitchen, the glow of the oven casting shadows on the linoleum, the scent of pecan pie lingering like a memory. It was late October, and Lake Eufaula whispered outside, its waves a steady pulse against the shore. At 74, Evie's hands, rough from years at the Montgomery textile mill, gripped a pen, hovering over her will. The document, yellowed and creased, lay on the table beside a chipped coffee mug and the Christmas invitation that had shattered her heart, her name scratched out in black marker. Matt's note, a cold dismissal. Mama, I'm sorry, but Carrie thinks it's best you don't come. The word still stung, sharp as a nettle. But tonight, something new stirred in Evie, a resolve as firm as the oak fence Henry had built around their cottage. The radio played low. Hank Williams' Your Cheatin' Heart weaving through the quiet, its twang echoing her betrayal. Evie's hound dog, Biscuit, slept by the hearth, his soft snores a comfort in the stillness. She'd spent the day wrestling with Matt's choice, his silence when Carrie declared her too simple for their Montgomery Christmas, his note that cast her out like a stranger. But this morning, at First Baptist Church, everything had changed. Evie had joined the hymn circle, singing Blessed Assurance with the ladies, her apron still dusted with flour from baking cornbread for the potluck. Louise Lou Mitchell, her dearest friend, had pulled her aside after the final verse, her voice low and urgent. Evie, Lou had said, her braid swinging as she leaned close. I heard something at the farmer's market. Matt was there, talking to a man from a real estate outfit in Montgomery. Asked about praising your house. Like he's planning to sell it out from under you. Evie's heart had lurched, the hymn's echo fading in her ears. Sell my house, she'd whispered, her hands clutching her hymnal. He wouldn't. Not without talking to me. Lou's eyes had flashed. He's under Carrie's spell. Hunt, you gotta do something. This ain't just a house, it's you and Henry. Every dream you're built. The words had lit a fuse, burning slow through Evie's prayers. She'd driven home, the Buick's radio playing Patsy Cline's I Fall to Pieces, her mind racing like the lake under a summer squall. She thought of Henry's journal, its pages holding his hopes for Matt, his faith in her strength. Stand up, Evie, he'd written in 95. You're the heart of this family. She'd clung to that, but Matt's betrayal planning to sell her home. Their legacy cut deeper than the invitation. It wasn't just a house. It was the porch where Henry taught Matt to tie a fishing knot. The kitchen where they'd eaten fried catfish on Sundays. The garden where camellias bloomed like promises. Now, staring at the will. Evie felt that fire flare. She'd named Matt the sole heir years ago, thinking it was his birthright. But birthrights were earned with love, not taken with greed. She set the pen down, her decision made, and reached for Henry's journal, tucked in the cedar chest by the window. Its leather cover, soft as a prayer, smelled of pine and thyme. She opened to a page from 2008, Henry's last year. Matt's chasing a big life. But he's got to learn love's worth more than money. Evie's got to show him, even if it hurts. She traced the words, tears pricking, and knew she couldn't let Matt and Carrie take her home, not without a fight. The phone's ring startled her. Biscuit lifted in his head. Evie answered, hoping it was Matt. But it was Helen Peterson, her neighbor. "Evie, you bringing that pecan pie to the potluck tomorrow?" Helen asked, her corgi yapping in the background. "Folks are counting on it." "I'll be there," Evie said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Save me a spot." "Helen, you sound off." Helen said, "Soft, everything all right, just wrestling some ghosts." Evie replied, forcing a smile, "I'll be fine." She hung up, returning to the will. With a deep breath, she struck through Matt's name, each stroke a wound but also a claim. She wrote a new clause, leaving the house to a trust for the Eufaula Heritage Association, to preserve it as a community space. It felt right, like planting a camellia that had bloomed long after she was gone. She sealed the document, sliding it into an envelope, and set it beside the invitation, its black mark a reminder of what she'd lost and what she'd fight to keep. The next day, Evie drove to the office of James Jim Bennett, a lawyer Lou had recommended. The radio played Alabama's Dixieland Delight, its upbeat chords clashing with her mood. Jim's office, in a brick building off Barber Street, smelled of coffee and leather. He was young, maybe 30, with a Dothan drawl and eyes that held a quiet fire. "Mrs. Carter," he said, shaking her hand. "Lou says you need help. What's going on?" Evie slid the envelope across his desk, her voice low. "My son, Matt, and his wife, Carrie, want my house by Lake Eufaula. He's been talking to real estate folks behind my back, and they sent me this." She handed him the invitation, its black mark stark. "I changed my will, leaving the house to a trust. I need you to make it ironclad." Jim's brow furrowed as he read the note. "This is personal," he said, looking up. "I lost my family's farm to a dispute years back. I won't let you lose your home, Mrs. Carter, but we need evidence, something to prove Matt's overstepping." Evie nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll get it," she said. "Matt's coming to the Eufaula Pilgrimage Festival next week. Carrie'll be there, too. She's not one to keep quiet." Jim leaned back, a faint smile tugging his lips. "You're a fighter, Mrs. Carter. Let's build this case." The Pilgrimage Festival was Eufaula's pride, a weekend of tours through historic homes, with streets lit by lanterns and stalls selling fried catfish and peach cobbler. Evie's cottage wasn't on the tour, but she'd always loved the bustle, the way folks swapped stories over sweet tea. This year, though her heart wasn't in it, she dressed in a cotton skirt and blouse, pinned a camellia from her garden to her collar, and drove to the festival, her phone in her purse, set to record. If Carrie was planning to sell her house, she'd slip, and Evie would be ready. The festival hummed with life children darting through crowds, a bluegrass band playing Sweet Home Alabama, the air thick with the scent of cornbread and magnolias. Evie found Lou by a stall selling honey, her braid tucked under a straw hat. "You sure about this?" Lou asked, handing her a lemonade. "Confronting Carrie in public's risky." "I'm not confronting," Evie said, her voice firm. "I'm listening." "She'll talk, Lou. She always does." They wandered the festival, Evie's eyes scanning for Matt and Carrie. She spotted them near the Shorter mansion, Carrie in a silk dress, laughing with a group of Montgomery friends. Matt at her side, his smile strained. Evie stayed back, blending with the crowd, her phone recording. Carrie's voice, sharp as a switch, carried over the chatter. "Matt's mama's house is a gold mine," she said. "Sipping a mimosa. We'll sell it, get her into a home, and buy that condo in Gulf Shores. She's too old to manage it anyway." Evie's heart clenched, but she held still. The recording capturing every word. Matt shifted, muttering, "Carrie, Maybe we should talk to her first. Carrie laughed, dismissive. Bless her heart. Matt, she'll do what's best. You just leave it to me. Evie stopped the recording, her hands shaking. She slipped the phone into her purse. Lou's arm steady in her. You got her, Lou whispered. That's your proof. Evie nodded, but the pain was raw. Matt's hesitation, his weak protest, wasn't enough. He'd let Carrie plan to steal her home, their legacy. She turned, heading for her Buick. The festival's joy fading behind her. At home. She emailed the recording to Jim. Her fingers steady despite the ache in her chest. He called within the hour, his voice grim. This is gold. Mrs. Carter. Carrie's own words. Planning to sell without your consent. We'll use it in court. Court, Evie asked, her voice catching. It's come to that, it has, Jim said. Soft. Matt's already had his lawyer, Bill Thompson, try to change your will. I checked he's been filing papers claiming you're not fit to manage your estate. We fight this, or they'll take everything. Evie sank into Henry's chair. The journal in her lap. She opened to a page from 2007, Evie's love is a river, deep and true. But she's got to dam it sometimes. For her own sake, she closed her eyes. Henry's voice echoing. She'd fought for Matt all her life, school, dreams, love, but now she'd fight for herself, for the home that held their story. The next day, Evie met Jim at his office, bringing the will and the recording. They drafted a new document, locking the house in a trust, untouchable by Matt or Carrie. Jim explained the legal steps, his voice steady. We'll file a countersuit, he said, challenging their claim and exposing their actions. You ready for this? Mrs. Carter. Evie looked out the window, the lake glinting in the distance. I'm ready, she said, her voice like steel. For Henry, for me. She drove home, the radio playing Alabama's My Home's in Alabama, its chords a reminder of her roots. The festival had shown her Matt's truth, but it had also shown her own. She wasn't just a mother, she was Evie Carter, who'd built a home with camellias and courage. Whatever came next, court, conflict, or heartbreak, she'd face it, her heart fierce, her home her own. Hey there. Dear sisters, it's Eva, back on my porch in Eufaula, Alabama, with a glass of sweet tea and the lake shimmering like a mirror under the November stars. At 65, I've learned that life's toughest battles, those that break your heart, can also mend it, like a camellia blooming brighter after a hard rain. You'll ever fight for something so precious it felt like your soul was on the line, only to find hope waiting on the other side. That's where we find Evie Carter now, standing tall after a storm, her hands holding tight to her home by Lake Eufaula, her heart opening, slow and careful, to a son who's lost his way. Let's step into her world, feel the weight lifting from her shoulders, and see how a mother's love can mend what's broken. Come along, and let's walk this path of healing with her. The Barber County Courthouse stood proud in Eufaula's heart, its red brick glowing under a crisp November sun. Inside, the courtroom was hushed, the air thick with anticipation, smelling of polished oak and old paper. Evie Carter, 74, sat beside her lawyer, James Jim Bennett, her navy dress pressed, a camellia from her garden pinned to her collar. Her hands, worn from years at the Montgomery textile mill, rested on Henry's journal, its leather cover a quiet anchor. Across the aisle, her son Matthew Matt Carter, 38, sat with his wife, Caroline Carrie Reynolds, their faces drawn tight, like folks waiting for a storm to break. Evie's heart ached at the sight of Matt, his eyes downcast, but she held firm, knowing this fight for her lakefront cottage, for her dignity, was one she couldn't lose. Judge Howard, a tall man with a voice like gravel, took his seat, his gavel striking once. "We're here to settle the matter of Evelyn Carter's estate," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "I've reviewed the evidence, including testimonies and a recording presented by Mrs. Carter's counsel. Let's proceed." Jim stood, his Dothan drawl steady. "Your Honor, Mrs. Carter's son, Matthew Carter, and his wife, Caroline Reynolds, attempted to alter her will without consent, claiming she was unfit to manage her property. We've shown, through a recording from the Eufaula Pilgrimage Festival, that Mrs. Reynolds planned to sell Mrs. Carter's home for personal gain, manipulating Mr. Carter. Additionally, their former lawyer, William Thompson, has testified to being pressured into filing false documents. Mrs. Carter's will, leaving her home to a trust for the Eufaula Heritage Association, is her rightful choice, and we ask the court to uphold it." Evie's pulse quickened. The memory of Carrie's voice, sharp, smug, bragging about selling her home echoing in her mind. She glanced at Matt, hoping for a sign of the boy who'd sketched their cottage, but his face was stone, Carrie's hand tight on his arm. The gallery church ladies from First Baptist. Farmers in crimson tide caps murmured, their eyes on Evie, knowing the weight of her stand. Matt's lawyer, a slick man from Montgomery, rose. "Your Honor, my clients acted out of concern for Mrs. Carter's well-being. The house is a burden for a woman of her age, living alone. Mr. Carter only sought to protect his mother's interests, believing she'd agreed to changes in her will." Evie's chest tightened, the lie stinging like a wasp. She leaned toward Jim, whispering, "They're twisting it, Jim. I never agreed to nothing." Jim nodded, his voice low. "We've got this. Mrs. Carter, the truth's on our side." Judge Howard's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Carter." "Would you like to speak?" Evie stood, her knees trembling, but her voice clear, like a hymn rising in church. "Your Honor, this house by Lake Eufaula is more than a burden. It's where me and my Henry raised Matt, where we laughed over cornbread, where he carved our names on the fence. I worked my whole life for it, and I loved my boy with every breath. But he let his wife," she glanced at Carrie, "who looked away, call me simple, unfit for their Christmas. He tried to sell my home behind my back, thinking I wouldn't fight, but I'm standing here, saying this is mine, not for money, but for love for Henry, for me." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of her words heavy as a summer night. Matt's head dropped, his hands clenching, while Carrie's lips pursed, her composure slipping. Lou gave Evie a nod, her eyes bright with pride. Judge Howard leaned forward, his voice measured. "I've heard enough. The evidence is clear. Mr. Carter and Mrs. Reynolds acted without Mrs. Carter's consent, attempting to undermine her will. The court upholds Mrs. Carter's right to her property. The house remains hers, and her current will is valid. This matter is closed." The gavel struck, a sound like thunder, and Evie exhaled, tears spilling soft. She'd won not just the house, but her place, her voice. Jim turned to her, his smile warm. "You did it, Mrs. Carter. They can't touch you now." Evie nodded, her heart a tangle of relief and sorrow. She looked at Matt, hoping for a glance. But he and Carrie stood, their faces hard, and left without a word. Carrie's heels clicking sharp on the floor. The church ladies in the gallery clapped, soft and proud, but Evie felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty, like the lake settling after a storm. Outside, the Alabama air was cool, the lake glistening in the distance. Lou met her at the steps, holding a thermos of sweet tea. "You were fierce, Evie," she said, hugging her tight. Henry smiling down. "I know it." Evie managed to smile, clutching Henry's journal. "I did it for him," she said, her voice soft. "And for me." They drove to Evie's cottage, the radio playing Alabama's My Homins in Alabama, its chords a balm. In the kitchen, Evie set out pecan pie and cornbread, Lou and Helen joining her for a quiet meal. The table, warmed by a single candle, felt alive again. The embroidered linens from Evie's mama glowing soft. They laughed over Helen's corgi stories, Lou's tales of the pilgrimage festival. But Evie's thoughts lingered on Matt. Would he ever see her? Not as a burden, but as his mama. The next day, Evie's phone buzzed. Matt's name lightened the screen. Her heart skipped, but she let it ring, not ready to hear his voice. He left a message, his tone heavy. Mama, it's Matt. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I'm at River City Grill tomorrow, noon. Please come. Evie played it twice, her fingers tracing the journal. Henry's words echo in Love's a river. Evie, let it flow, but don't drown. She drove to River City Grill, a cozy spot by the lake, its air rich with the scent of cornbread and fried catfish. Matt sat by a window, his flannel shirt rumpled, a bouquet of camellias on the table, her flowers. From her garden, Evie sat across from him, her hands folded, the journal in her purse a silent strength. Mama, Matt said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I let Carrie take over. Let her make me think selling the house was right. I was wrong about everything. Evie studied him, seeing the boy who'd sketched their home, but also the man who'd hurt her. Matt, she said, her voice steady. You stood there when she said I didn't fit. You tried to take my home, Henry's dream. Words ain't enough. Why should I trust you? Matt's eyes glistened, his hands clenching the table. You shouldn't, he said. Raw. I don't deserve it. But I'm here, Mama, trying. I found this. He pulled out a faded sketch, his childhood drawing of the cottage. I drew this for you and Dad. I forgot what it meant, what you mean. I want to make it right, if you'll let me. Evie's throat tightened, the sketch a bridge to the past. She touched it, seeing Henry's smile in Matt's lines. I love you, Matt, she said, tears spilling. But trust takes time. You hurt me deep, and I need to see you mean it, not just words, but actions. Matt nodded, his voice thick. I'll show you, Mama. I'm leaving Carrie's plans behind. I want to come home, help with the garden, maybe draw again, whatever it takes. Evie reached for his hand, her touch tentative but warm. Start small, she said. Come for supper Sunday. Bring your sketchbook. We'll see where it goes. They parted with a hug, fragile but real, like a camellia bud, just opening. Evie drove home. The radio playing Patsy Cline's Walking After Midnight, its ache softening into hope. She felt Henry's presence, his journal a guide, urging her to let love flow, slow and true. Back at the cottage, Evie found new purpose. She joined a painting class at the Eufaula Community Center, her brush tracing the lake's curves, each stroke a step toward herself. She painted beside Lou, their laughter echoing like hymns, and hung her first piece a view of her camellias beside Matt's sketch in the hall. The house, once heavy with loss, felt alive, its porch humming with possibility. That Sunday, Matt came, his sketchbook under his arm, a shy smile breaking through. They ate cornbread and collards, talking of Henry, of Eufaula's quiet beauty. It wasn't the past, but something new, a seed planted in fertile ground. Evie looked at him, seeing her boy, and knew they'd grow, slow as the lake's waves, steady as her camellias. Hey there, sweet sisters. It's Eva, sitting on my porch in Eufaula, Alabama, with a glass of sweet tea and the lake glowing gold under a springtime sunset. At 65, I've learned that life's like a pecan pie. Sometimes you've got to break the crust to find the sweetness inside. You'll ever look back on a hard road and see how it led you to a place of peace, stronger than you knew. That's where we find Evie Carter now, her hands painting new dreams, her heart mending with her boy Matt, and her cottage by Lake Eufaula blooming like a camellia after a long winter. Let's step into her world one last time, feel the hope rising like a hymn, and see how a mother's love can build something new. Come along, and let's celebrate this new beginning with her. Evie Carter stood in her garden, the April breeze carrying the scent of clematis and damp earth from Lake Eufaula. At 74, she moved with a quiet grace, her hands, rough from years at the Montgomery textile mill, cradling a paintbrush. Her cottage, its white clapboard walls warmed by the sun, hummed with life camellias burst in pink. The porch rocking chairs creaking soft, her hound dog Biscuit lazing in the shade. 5 months had passed since the Barber County Courthouse, where Evie had stood tall, defending her home against her son, Matthew Matt Carter, and his wife, Caroline Carrie Reynolds. That victory, sealed by Judge Howard's gavel, had given her more than a house. It had given her back her voice, her heart, her place in the world. This morning, Evie was painting on the porch, her easel holding a canvas of the lake, its waves dancing in shades of blue and gold. She'd joined a painting class at the Eufaula Community Center after the trial, urged by her friend Louise Lou Mitchell, who'd said, "Evie, you've got stories in those hands. Let 'em sing." Each brushstroke was a step toward herself, a woman who'd once dreamed of art before mill work, and motherhood filled her days. Her first painting, a view of her camellias, hung in the living room, beside a faded sketch Matt had drawn as a boy, their lines weaving past and present into something new. Evie's life had bloomed in ways she hadn't expected. She volunteered at the First Baptist Church, teaching kids to plant marigolds in the community garden, their laughter echoing like the hymns she'd sung with Henry. She'd started a journal, its pages filling with thoughts, memories of Henry's laugh, hopes for Matt, dreams of a life still unfolding. She wrote by the lake, the waves whispering peace, each word a seed planted in fertile ground. Her cottage, once heavy with loss, felt alive again, its porch a stage for new memories. The court battle had been a crucible, burning away the old Evie silent, sacrificing, always giving and forging, a woman who knew her worth. She'd won the house, locking it in a trust for the Eufaula Heritage Association, ensuring it'd stand long after she was gone. But the victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. Matt's betrayal, his plan to sell her home, egged on by Carrie's cold ambition, had cut deep. Yet, in the ashes of that pain, they'd found a fragile path back, starting with a meeting at River City Grill, where Matt's tears and a childhood sketch had cracked open her heart. Since then, Matt had come every Sunday, his sketchbook in hand, his smile shy but growing. They'd eat cornbread and collards, talking of Henry, of Eufaula's quiet beauty, of dreams they'd both let slip. Matt had left his real estate firm in Montgomery, tired of chasing Carrie's vision of wealth. He'd opened a small art gallery in a storefront off Broad Street, displaying local works, including Evie's lake painting and his own sketches. Carrie had moved back to Atlanta, their marriage crumbling under the weight of her pride. And Matt, free of her shadow, was finding his way home not just to Eufaula, but to himself. Today, Matt was due for supper, and Evie was baking pecan pie, the kitchen warm with its scent. The radio played Hank Williams' I Saw the Light, its gospel twang lifting her spirits. She set the table with her mama's embroidered linens, the same ones Carrie had mocked, now a badge of pride. A vase of camellias glowed in the center, their petals soft as a prayer. Evie glanced at the hall, where her painting and Matt's sketch hung side by side, a testament to their mending bond. The doorbell chimed, and Evie opened it to find Lou, her braid tucked under a straw hat, holding a pan of collard greens. "Supper smells like heaven," Lou said, hugging her, Matt coming. Should be here soon, Evie said, taking the pan. He's bringing a surprise, he says. Lou grinned. Settle in at the table. That boy's trying. Evie, you ought to be proud. I am, Evie said, her voice soft. But it's slow. Lou, trust don't come back overnight. Helen Peterson arrived next, her corgi trailing, a jar of peach preserves in hand. Evie, your pie's going to steal the show, she said. Patting biscuit. Heard Matt's gallery's a hit. Folks say he's got your eye for beauty. Evie smiled. Stirring the greens. He's finding his way. That's enough for now. The crunch of gravel announced Matt's truck. Its roll tide sticker faded but proud. He stepped out, his flannel shirt open over a t-shirt, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. Mama, he called, hugging her tight, his scent of pine and charcoal an echo of Henry. Brought something for you? They gathered in the kitchen, the table groaning with pie, greens, cornbread, and Helen's preserves. Matt pulled a frame from his bag, unwrapping it to reveal a new sketch, a view of the cottage, its porch bathed in sunset, camellias in bloom. For you, Mama, he said, his voice low. I drew it last week, sitting right out there. It's how I see home now. Evie's eyes misted, her fingers tracing the lines. It's beautiful. Matt, she said, her voice catching, like you saw it through Henry's eyes. Matt's smile was shy. I'm trying to see it through yours, too. I'm sorry, Mama, for everything. Or I let Carrie blind me, but I'm here, and I ain't going nowhere. Evie reached for his hand, her touch warm. You're home, Matt. That's a start. We'll take it one supper at a time. They ate, laughing over Lou's tales of the pilgrimage festival, Helen's corgi antics, and Matt's gallery mishaps, a spilled coffee on a canvas, a kid drawing on a wall. The candle flickered, casting a glow on the linens, and Evie felt Henry's presence, his journal resting on her bedside table, its words a guide. Love's a river, Evie, let it flow. She looked at Matt, seeing the boy who'd sketched their home, the man learning to love it again, and knew they were building something new, not the past, but a future, fragile but true. After supper, they moved to the porch, the lake silver under the moon. Matt pulled out his sketchbook, drawing the camellias, while Evie sipped coffee, her journal open. She wrote April 15th, 2025. Matt's home, and so am I. Henry. We're healing, slow but sure. Lou and Helen chatted, their voices a soft hum, and Biscuit snored at Evie's feet, the night wrapping them like a quilt. The next week, Evie's painting was featured at the Eufaula farmers market, hung beside Matt's sketches in a booth draped with fairy lights. Folks stopped to admire, whispering about the Carter touch, and Evie smiled, sharing pecan pie with passers-by. She'd joined the Eufaula Heritage Association, helping plan the pilgrimage festival, her cottage now a stop on the tour, its porch a beacon of her story. She felt Henry in every bloom, every wave, his love a light that never dimmed. Matt visited often, bringing sketches, helping in the garden, their talks deepening. He spoke of leaving Carrie, of finding peace in Eufaula's quiet. I want to stay, Mama, he said one evening, as they ate fried catfish on the porch. Maybe open a studio here. Teach kids to draw, like Dad taught me. Evie's heart swelled. You've got his heart. Matt, she said, her voice soft. Stay. This is home. They planned a small gathering for the 4th of July. Just family and friends Lou, Helen, Jim Bennett, who'd become a friend. They'd eat cornbread, watch fireworks over the lake, and sing hymns under the stars. It wasn't the grand Christmas Matt and Carrie had planned, but it was theirs. Rooted in love, not show. Evie's journal grew. its pages a tapestry of her life. She wrote of painting, of Matt's gallery, of the lake's endless song. She volunteered at the community centre, teaching kids to paint, their laughter a balm. She'd found herself not just Matt's mama, but Evie Carter, artist, friend, woman of Eufaula. The cottage, once a battleground, was a haven, its porch a place of peace, one evening. As she sat on the porch, the radio playing Alabama's Dixieland Delight, Matt joined her, his sketchbook open. "Look, Mama," he said, showing a drawing of her painting by the lake, her face lit by joy. "This is you now." Evie's eyes misted, her hand touching his. "And this is us," she said, nodding at the cottage, the lake, the camellias. "We're home, Matt." The lake shimmered, a mirror of their mending hearts, and Evie felt Henry's smile, his journal a promise kept. She'd fought for her home, her dignity, and found more a son returning. A life reborn, a love that endured, like camellias blooming through every season. Oh, sisters, Evie's story is like a hymn sung soft at First Baptist, full of pain but rising to hope. You'll ever find peace after a storm, knowing you're stronger for it. I'd love to hear your tales, drop them in the comments. Let's share our hearts. If Evie's journey warmed you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. 'Cause we've got more stories from Eufaula, more tears, laughs, and slices of pecan pie. Stay with me, and let's keep walking this road together.